What's up, everybody? Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, HawgSports.com. We got an interesting show for you today because we're going to break down everything that's happened so far with Arkansas in the transfer portal, kind of break things down into different categories with the players that they're bringing in. We're going to talk a little bit of basketball with Connor Goodson, talk recruiting and transfer portal with Danny West, and we'll get to your questions as well if we got some time. All that more on today's episode of Hawg Sports Live. Hey, before we get started, I want to remind you there's plenty of ways to watch and listen to the show. You can always tune into us on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to the page, set it to where you're notified anytime we upload new videos. Also available on Facebook. Give us a thumbs up, a like, a share, whatever on all those different platforms. We'd really appreciate it. Follow our Instagram page and listen to us wherever you find podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else you are. We should have a banner down here, but there it is. Boom. 30% off right now at HawgSports, HawgSports.com. Where to begin? First, thank you to Grok for creating the thumbnail today. Let's look at Arkansas basketball just real quick. We're going to talk to Connor Goodson here in just a little bit. But Arkansas, obviously, with a really disappointing effort. Knoxville lost 76-52. One of the things that jump out is that Arkansas didn't have a shoot-around before. I don't know why they didn't do that with only like one true road game. Obviously, we can look back at that and say, well, they didn't shoot very well. Maybe that's one of the reasons. But Tennessee's obviously very good. It's just disappointing that this was a game for about 10 minutes and then it wasn't suddenly. And Arkansas falling 76-52, just a not very good effort. I mean, Arkansas was out-rebounded significantly. Tennessee had more offensive rebounds than Arkansas had total rebounds. They shot better from the floor. Just about every metric you can look at, Tennessee was better than Arkansas. The Hogs have a chance to redeem themselves, though, on Wednesday, tomorrow, January 8th. They face Ole Miss at 6 o'clock in Bud Walton Arena. Ole Miss is pretty good. Ole Miss is, like 12-2 or something like that? Maybe better than that. They're ranked 23rd, I believe. Yeah, they're 12-2, ranked 23rd nationally. It's an interesting slate coming up for Arkansas. You talk about opportunities to redeem yourself. You've also got Florida on Saturday, January 11th at 3 o'clock. That one is also in Bud Walton Arena. Florida is number 8 nationally right now. I'm using AP poll at 13-1. So a couple of really intriguing games in Bud Walton Arena, opportunities to bounce back. I feel like times when Arkansas has got it handed to them in the past, like the Illinois game, they bounced back pretty strong. Let's look at what happened after that Illinois game. Lost 90-77 in Kansas City. Came back, beat Miami in Coral Gables 76-73. Beat UTSA, obviously, in Bud Walton Arena 75-60. And then went to New York and beat Michigan 89-87 in Madison Square Garden. And went on a nice streak. They hadn't lost since that game against Illinois. So maybe they'll get a bit of a wake-up call against Tennessee. Maybe they'll learn some things, be better for it. Obviously, it's disappointing to see them get beat like that, a team that has so much talent, but Tennessee's also very good, and they were the home team. It was the SEC opener for both squads. So, but Arkansas right now is 0-1 in SEC play, 11-3 overall. I have not seen the line for this yet on Bet Saracen. There are plenty of double R prop bets. I'm looking at this. There's got to be 30 different prop bets, like things like, Boogie Flan and DJ Wagner, going for under 3.5 turnovers and over 11.5 assists combined, things like that. So those are the prop bets, but I have not seen a betting line for this one just yet. What we know about these two teams, Arkansas is 8-2 against Ole Miss in the last 10, 5-5 against the spread in those 10. Arkansas just barely outscoring them, shooting just barely better. Ole Miss out rebounding Arkansas in the last 10. Arkansas better from three-point range as a percentage, with Ole Miss making more of them. So should be an interesting matchup on a Wednesday night, a relatively early game. So yeah, Arkansas is, where are they in the AP? Arkansas is the second most team receiving votes right now. So there's 62 votes. Pittsburgh has 91. And then to get into the top 25, Utah has 119 at number 25. So Darren Wilson left to take the Georgia State defensive coordinator job. It's a good opportunity for him. He's been a defensive coordinator before. He was at McNeese State, but obviously wanted to get into that coordinator role. He shared secondary duties with Marcus Woodson. Marcus Woodson was the is the passing game defensive coordinator. Darren Wilson was listed as the passing game, as the secondary coach. But they both worked with safeties, nickels, cornerbacks, just kind of alternated, worked together. It was kind of one big room with how they did things. I would expect for Arkansas to make a hire out of the AFCA coaches convention, which is the 11th, I believe the 11th through the 12th. Let me see when that is exactly. AFCA, the 12th through the 14th. Sorry, it's a 3-day deal. January 12th through the 14th, you see a lot of interviews going on, a lot of coaching hires done then. Your speakers for this are Jeff Monken at Army, Rhett Lashley, Springdale's own from SMU, Charles Huff from Southern Miss, and I believe two more. Clark Lee from Vanderbilt and Kurt Signetti from Indiana. Those are Jay Norville also. From Colorado State. Those are your keynote General Assembly, General Session guys. But you also have Marcus Woodson. Marcus Woodson is set to speak. Jay Norvell is just a regular speaker. Marcus Woodson's a regular speaker. So you've got a couple of guys that with Arkansas ties speaking at that deal. But Marcus Woodson will be there. Maybe he'll be interviewing people to coach alongside him. He's probably got a pretty good idea of where things stand right now. The latest Arkansas transfer portal commitment is Ismail Cisse. Hope it's not Sissy. Cisse. A good-looking wide receiver from Stanford. He's just a sophomore. I want to look at him just a little bit since he is the most recent guy. 26 catches for 241 yards. It's a 9.3 average, 2 touchdowns. Stanford was not a very good team in the ACC. As weird as that is to say, but Arkansas saw something they liked here. Now let's look at these wide receivers real quick that Arkansas has brought in. So they brought in Cisse, who is, pretty modest statistics on a subpar team last year. Another guy that they brought in is Raylan Sharp out of Fresno State. Raylan Sharp had 51 catches last year, and the year before had 73. He's got like 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns the last 2 years. Not a big guy, 5'9", 165, a very productive guy. There's different categories that you can look at when you're talking about transfer portal, and he kind of fits into a guy, group of 5, very productive. Cam Shanks out of UAB would be a very similar guy. 62 catches last year, 656 yards, 6 touchdowns, 5'8", 180. Again, not a very big wide receiver, but somebody that was very productive, which I think is an important thing to look at. Omega Blake probably fits into that category too. The difference with Omega Blake is he had 19 catches for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns at South Carolina in 2023. And then last year transfers to Charlotte, 32 catches, 795 yards. That's 24.8 yards per carry and 9 touchdowns. So he was a big play guy. You're looking at him to be a guy that can, really step up for you. And then the other guy, a different category of player, a guy that hasn't proven himself to be a superstar, but has that kind of potential. That's what you would project out of a guy ranked number 43 nationally, 6 foot, 179 pound, Courtney Crutchfield out of Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Went to Missouri last year for what I'm told, a boatload of money, and started hearing around October that, hey, watch out for Courtney Crutchfield to hit the transfer portal, and wants to get back to Arkansas. So that obviously transpired. He was a big-time recruit, but this is a guy that you would expect to come in next year and be a big-time player for him. If he's not next year, then he probably will never be. If you don't bite pretty early as a skill position guy, you probably never are going to. Now, what are these guys replacing? And we're going to bring in Danny West here in just a moment, but what are these guys replacing? Andrew Armstrong? Really? I mean, you're looking for somebody to come in and replace Andrew Armstrong and then a better supporting cast. I said this before. All love to Isaiah Satania. There's dozens of wide receivers as good as him. Same with Isaac Teslaw. We all love Isaac Teslaw because if you know the ball's coming his way, he's going to catch it. But there are dozens of wide receivers as good as Isaac Teslaw in the transfer portal. And the hope is that Arkansas got guys better. Now, what is Andrew Armstrong? Really good guy. Guy I'll remember as a great Razorback for his personality, character, his on-field play. What he had, like 78 catches, 1,100 yards last year, only one touchdown, as odd as that is. Guy that's been projected as a undrafted free agent, maybe a 6th-round draft pick. So as good as Andrew Armstrong was, we're talking about trying to replace a guy that was a 6th-round draft pick, potentially. So that's not super high standards when you talk about the SEC. Obviously, he was very productive. Can Arkansas replace him with this group of guys? That's what they're trying to do. You can look through the list of all the guys that they're bringing in the transfer portal, and we can kind of, say, okay, are there guys that are next level superstars, proven Power 5 stars? I don't see a lot of that on this class. There's 18 guys committed right now. Are there guys that are potential for that? Courtney Crutchfield would probably fall in that category. I think that Shaq McCroy, who was a top 100 player, went to Oregon, 6'8", 365-pound offensive lineman. Maybe he's a guy like that. Jaden Platt, Texas A&M tight end, who has not played. There's been older guys at tight end he's played behind, but he's a 4-star transfer, 4-star recruit. He's actually rated higher than Luke Hass. Almost forgot his name. He's at Ole Miss now. So maybe Browsard at Ole Miss, an offensive lineman that Arkansas recruited who entered the transfer portal as a freshman. Those are younger guys who were recruited very highly, who you would look at and say, the hope is that this guy will be, one of those superstar types. Then they've got some other, a group of other guys who played in the SEC and were good players or played in Power 5 conferences, like Justin Boone, who was a former 4-star recruit who's at Florida, defensive end. Ken Talley, who was at Michigan State, another defensive end. So you've got a group of guys like that, and then you've got players who competed on the group of 5 level, like some of the receivers that we just mentioned. Quintavious Scandrett at safety from Eastern Michigan, a guy who was very productive for them. David Oak out of Abilene Christian, very productive defensive tackle for them. So it's kind of different groups of transfer portal players. The guys that are going to excite everybody are guys that are top 50 national recruits and stuff. But Arkansas, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're next level. Like Jaquindon Jackson was number 59 transfer portal in the country last year, and we're talking about him kind of as a back-end NFL draft guy, undrafted free agent type, So that doesn't necessarily mean, and there's probably like 4 schools in the SEC that signed multiple top 50 type guys. But Arkansas didn't go that path this year. They didn't go the path of like getting Xavier Sories or Jaden Hazelwoods or Jaheim Singletary. Some of those guys pan out, some of them don't. But what they have done, I think, is gotten a lot of like veteran good players. Let's bring Danny West in. Danny's going to talk to us about it. Danny, you about ready to come in, bud? Let me get this thing situated for us. They changed it to media assets now. We're going to go multiple. We're going to drop this off. I got to find a better system for this. Danny, how's it going, man?
Hey, buddy. I'm doing well. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Good to have you on, man.
Yeah.
How's the weather there?
Cold. It's got over a foot of snow, and probably going to get out in here and play in it here in a little while.
It's snowing in parts of Fayetteville, but I just looked out the window. It's not snowing here. You said you got a foot?
Yeah, over a foot, probably 14 inches or so.
Yeah, that's good. Kids out of school, I guess you said.
Yeah,
sledding.
Yeah, we're planning on. We've been trying to go sledding for, ever since it started, but it's like 9 degrees, and I'm still from Rising, Arkansas, but
I hear you, man. I hear you. It's been cold here. I mean, it's been in the 20s. So, Danny, let's get your reaction right now. They've got 18 transfer portal commitments. Just your thoughts on the class that they've put together so far. Not a whole lot of star power, some potential star power, but guys that aren't proven. And then seems like a lot of productive guys, and then SEC players, guys that have competed in the SEC, guys that have competed in the Power 5 conferences.
Yeah, I think people always want household names, right? Everybody wants to be 4-5-star type transfer, and that's just not the case, obviously, with this class. I think you hit on something there. There's a lot of potential for that in this class. You look at some of these guys, the bigger names, Shaq McCroy, even Kenny Walker a little bit from Oklahoma, kind of had a big-time name, been to a couple of big schools there. But on the surface, Trey, I think a lot of people are probably a little bit disappointed, just in terms of you hear so much money being tossed about and talked about, and then they go out and they're sitting around 13th right now with really not a ton of household type names, SEC type star names, and you're kind of banking on hoping some of these guys pan out in that way, like Shaq, some of these Corey Robinson, offensive tackle from Georgia Tech. You've got to have those guys as starters. Like I'm not saying every one of them has to start, but you understand what I mean. You've got to have those guys show up, and it just feels like there's not as many proven guys as you see at Auburn, LSU, Ole Miss right now. They're all stacking them up, SEC type household names. Really not seeing that from Arkansas, but that's not to say that it's a bad class, in my opinion.
Do you think, Danny, that this is a better class than what they had last year?
Oh, it's boy, you never know until around October of the next year, do you? But
yeah. Well, I can tell you why you don't know, Danny, because you're looking at guys from like all but 3 guys. Would they have a 21-man transfer portal class last year? All but like 3 guys. One was Shoffrey Brown, who was injured and took a medical hardship. But Joe Moore didn't really contribute last year. Blake Boda didn't, and Shoffrey Brown. Yeah. Everybody else did. And Arkansas was definitely better because of the guys that they brought in last year. You also had guys like
position groups. Can you say that about right now, though?
How many position groups are they better?
Yeah. Offensive line, they've gotten better. Receiver.
Without a question, they've gotten better on the offensive line, Danny.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you probably feel the same. I don't know if you said it, but Kudus is a good player. The fact that Kudus is ranked the number 9 transfer portal player in the country is ridiculous.
A bit much.
Sorry. Yeah. It's a bit much. I think he's a good player. I think they lost a quality offensive lineman with Kudus, but he only played in 4 games last year also. But to me, the guy like Addison Nichols, fine. He's an average player. Joshua Braun, an average player. They didn't lose anything special by losing those guys, in my opinion. I think that they are improved on the offensive line with the guys they brought in. Yeah. What are they at now? 5?
Yeah,
5 offensive linemen.
5. Now, I think that'll be it.
Yeah, I think that probably has to be it. I mean, as Eric Mateo said last year, it's hard to bring in when you start, when you get 4 or 5 offensive linemen. They're like, well, how many guys you got? But I think they've got 9 guys that are going to compete. 9 guys that they can look at to compete for starting positions next year. Now, I would ask some questions about some guys. Doomerville, like, why did he only start 3 games at Maryland? He was a backup. The starter was hurt, But he was a guy that's, played at LSU before that. And really, he started against Arkansas. But, is this an SEC quality offensive lineman, or is it a guy that's brought in to help? Because you need backups too, I guess.
Both, yeah.
Yeah, but there's Doomerville. We mentioned Shaq McCroy, who's obviously a guy that you would expect or hope to come in and push immediately for playing time. I like Caden Kittler in the fact that he played center last year.
Yeah.
The last 2 guys that they've had center, Bo Limmer and Addison Nichols, did not play center the year before. But Kittler also played for a 4-8 UCF team. Corey Robinson started 7 games for Georgia Tech last year. I think he's got like 24 career starts. He started each of the last 7 games. Why didn't he start the games before that? So there's some question, and I think I'm leaving somebody out. Maybe
you
not.
Mentioned Broussard.
Oh yeah, Broussard, who's was just a freshman last year. But that's another guy that you would think that with his offer list as a freshman when he went to Ole Miss, that maybe he's a guy that has potential. But I also like the fact that Danny, that they brought in Broussard, McCroy. Those 2 guys to go with Zuri Madison and Kobe Branham, that gives you a 4-man class in that class of 2024, which makes that group a lot healthier with those younger players. But I do feel like there's, the problem with last year, I thought, not only were maybe some of those guys pretty average, but because it was a subpar offensive line. I mean, let's face it, it was not the disaster that it was in 2023, but it was still not above average. The question is, can they get above average with this group? Can they continue to take steps forward? And if they can, that'll make Taylon Green a better quarterback. It'll make them a better running team. But, for all that, Danny, like they were a much better passing team and running team this year than they were last year with that offensive line.
We keep saying that word, though, potential, right?
There's a lot of that. Yeah.
That's kind of the theme for this thing. It's not that they're just striking out. They've got some good players, right? But you've got to have them pan out. You've got to. I mean, the offensive line, they've got to. Wide receiver, obviously, I'm a big fan of Omega Blake. I feel like that might be one of their top 2 or 3 pickups so far. And, obviously Courtney, wide receiver, he goes up to Missouri, and everybody kind of questions, well, why didn't he play so much? And then you check out Missouri's roster, and it's pretty easy to find out. They had Luther Burden and Theo and, a bunch of homegrown 4-star guys who were younger, a couple out of the Kansas City area, St. Louis. So they were stacked there. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think those two in particular offer a lot, kind of similar players. And then, of course, you throw in Raylan Sharp, a guy who's familiar with Bobby in the offense. So Cam Shanks obviously brings some explosive type stuff at receiver as well as a returner. But I'm with you, man. It's just everybody keeps asking me, what do you think about the class? And 2 things, really. Like I said earlier, I think it takes a while to really know what you've got. Really, until the end of next season, you don't know. You get into the season, and week to week, sometimes you don't even know what you've got really anymore. So that's the lazy way of saying we got to sit back and kind of let it play out. They got what, 5 or 6 more spots they still got to fill here, Trey. We're kind of waiting on one guy. In particular,
don't you think that? I mean, they're going to have some guys bolt on him though.
Yeah, they still got plenty of
because I've got him at 86 right now, Danny, on scholarship.
But some of those groups too, Trey, they're way over. Like receiver.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they got 15 receivers. Yeah, they need like 10 receivers. They were way over receiver last year. They're going to have to make some cuts or say, hey, can you play corner? Can you play safety to some of these guys?
Man, I feel like they were. I thought this final week here we could talk about some of the calendar, but they've got until basically Saturday to get all the mid-year transfers in for January, and I'm just not seeing a whole lot of names coming in this week. So we know coaches have gone out on the road. And they're starting 2026, 27 recruiting, going to have a junior day this weekend, and we'll see what comes of that. But I kind of expected a few more visitors this week, and maybe it will happen, but just not hearing a whole lot right now.
So, Danny, we're looking at all but like 7 guys, I think, from the recruiting class coming in at midterm.
Yeah, I think so. That feels like a lifetime ago now.
Yeah, well, for those who don't understand how that works, so they're at 86 scholarship players, but they could go up to, at this midterm, they could go up to as many as 92 if they have 7 who don't enroll yet, because it's just on campus at one time. So they could have, 92 technically, and then by the time, spring is over and summer starts, start cutting some guys. And they're going to have to. I mean, they've got too many wide receivers. Like, Shamar Easter may make sense at wide receiver because he can't, compete at tight end or something, but you've got a surplus at wide receiver and you need another tight end. Like there's things like that they've got to figure out. So we'll see. I think they're probably in pretty good shape there at offensive line. I think they've got like 16. That's a pretty good number. 17 would be perfect, but
it's back now a little bit. Now we'll see what kind of quality they got, but the numbers are a lot better there. Finally.
Yeah. I look at some guys too, though, last year, Danny, like, guys that weren't just like super celebrated that, ended up making a good impact. Stephen Dix Jr. was an 85 transfer portal ranking, which is pretty low, and ended up starting for them. I don't love our transfer portal rankings, Danny. Like, there's no way that Steven Dick should be ranked the same category as Joe Moore. Nothing against Joe Moore, but Joe Moore didn't play at all. So there's no reason to me that like he should be ranked the same category there. But Larry Worth was not a celebrated guy. I think Larry Worth is a nice guy to have back.
Yeah, I do too.
I think a lot of people would take back some of these guys that are leaving. That were not super highly ranked. I think Taylon Green, Taylon Green has a chance to be a lot better quarterback. I feel like he's right there, like if he can just see the field a little bit better, if he could have a little better clock in his head, just some of those, a little better ball security, some of those things just improve in all those categories. He's got a chance to be a really good quarterback. And I think that would be especially true if the offensive line can get above average, which they haven't been.
I'm with you on that. I think it's funny. We kind of put this expectation on Taylor sometimes. I think people have this misconception that maybe he's a former 5-star, former 4-star recruit, because everybody here is, well, Bobby recruited him out of high school. Well, hell, Bobby was at Missouri State trying to get him, so just seems to me like expectations got a little bit funky this year because he does do so much, and he'll show up in a big way and run for 70, and you're like, all right, that's who he's got to be from now on.
Yeah, he was great against bad defenses. He was great against bad defense.
We've got to see that.
Yeah.
When really we're talking about a dude who's made a huge jump. I mean, he was struggling at Boise last year a little bit up and down, and so I think it's a little bit unfair at times, and probably helps to keep that in perspective a little bit in the grand scheme of things. I'm not trying to cover for the guy. I mean, I get frustrated too.
Well, there's no arguing. Like, we can talk about whether we think that they're better off with the portal. I think they're fairly probably, if you shake it all down with the guys that are out of eligibility, guys that are going to the NFL draft, I feel like they're probably in a similar range right now, depending on how some guys play out. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, Pittman needs like an 8-game win season. He needs to have that happen. This fan base is already very frustrated.
Well, it's tough out there.
Yeah.
I mean, I read the board and I'm just like, dadgum, fellas. Let's maybe take a couple days. I never want them to not be on the board. Don't misunderstand.
Yeah.
Maybe take a day off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but you go 4-8, and then, you got guys like me telling you that, the university is going to keep Sam Pittman because 6 wins is good enough in the eyes of the U of A. And that's, as you put it, that's supposed to be some miraculous turnaround season.
Yeah.
And they won 7. They won the bowl game. I mean, I don't mean to discount that they won the bowl game. They had to win that bowl game, or, man, it would be completely unbearable. Completely. And they dominated in the bowl game too.
Yeah, it was good.
But
surprisingly dominated, I felt like. I mean, I thought Texas Tech was going to win the thing.
I think the big difference,
Danny, amount of attention to it, Trey. I got to be honest with you. But bowl games, I'm out on it. I mean, it hits me right in the middle of transfers, and I'm like,
sure,
I can't keep up with all of it.
I think the big difference was Arkansas had their quarterback and Texas Tech did not.
That's it. That was the game.
And especially with him being a mobile guy, able to make up for some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Danny. Anything else to add? Anything going on? High school recruiting?
High school recruiting, got a junior day coming up this weekend. Hopefully good weather. Everybody makes it safely and maybe get some new offers out. Be nice to see a new commitment, wouldn't it? And then transfer-wise, Trey, still waiting on Caleb Wooden, safety from Auburn. He had a 74-yard fumble return in Fayetteville a couple years ago. And I think he would be seen again, not as a SEC starter household type name that everybody gets super excited about, but a depth guy, and they need that right now. I think they could use another flex type, hybrid type safety, nickel, whatever the case may be in the back end, but he would fit that. He's got plenty of SEC experience, 28 games, and I think Arkansas is in a really good spot, but it's been kind of a weird cycle in terms of waiting for commitments. It seems like they leave campus and then we wait for a commitment, and then it's 4, 5, 7 days before anything really happen. So just kind of keeping an eye on Caleb Wooden at this point. They've got 18. He would be 19 if it happens. Now, again, I think they're in a good spot there, but you never know.
Yeah, be another SEC guy that has some experience. Danny, they've offered 10 players in the class of 2026 from inside the state.
Getting up there, ain't it?
Pretty good looking in-state crop. A couple of them, I guess, are committed. One guy's committed to Missouri, a couple of Arkansas commits, I think.
Yeah, got
just offered one today, right?
Yeah, just put another one out this morning. That would be to Blair Irvin up at Bentonville High. He is a 2026 wide receiver, 6'1", 175. He had 50 catches, right around 850 yards and 10 touchdowns this past year. Bentonville always, they're always playing for a championship. Or
for those not following along, 10 offers to in-state players is a pretty good number. Yeah, this day and age. Good enough.
Anytime you hit double digits in our state, especially this early, I mean, it's January 7th. Oh, happy birthday to my wife, Trey Biddy.
Oh, happy birthday, Ashley.
Happy birthday. Yeah, January 7th. But yeah.
Danny, you know what I'll always do on Facebook on my wife's birthday? The day after. The day after her birthday, I always put, I go, happy belated birthday.
good move right there. That's a pro move. I will be doing that one.
It's a lot of
one of year laughs. I wrote, "You are a great person" on my wife's Instagram. She was so good. I got away with words, Biddy.
Yep.
Anyway, not sure how we got off on that, but
that's birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday to my wife.
All right, man. Enjoy the snow.
Yeah, man.
Don't get out if you don't have to. All right, later, bud. All right, everybody. Excuse me. That's Danny West. You can follow Danny West at Danny West 24/7 on X. He's a HawgSports recruiting analyst, been with us forever now, and does just a fantastic job. Certainly very happy to have Danny West. We're going to go to Connor Goodson right after this message from our friends at Ozarks Go. Ozarks Go is offering exceptional internet service. I've said before, I've never had to plug and unplug my router and plug it back in. We don't have arguments around my house about the internet not working or bandwidth issues or any of that kind of stuff. It just works. And the good news is they're a local company. You can reach out to them at 479-684-4900. And when you say, hey, are you guys north of the tunnel? Are you out here in Rogers? Are you anywhere in Oklahoma? They're going to know the area that you're talking about because you're talking to a local person. You can go to ozarksgo.net/hawg, HAWG, and use the promo code BIDDY1 and get a free month. Free month at Ozarks Go. They're not going to jack your rates up year 1 to year 2. They offer several different tiers of internet. I use the multi-gig, which is flying. I think gigabit is probably good for most people. But they offer several different tiers at a great rate for steady, consistent internet service. ozarksgo.net/hawg. Check them out. All right, let's go to my man, Connor Goodson. Connor, how's it going, man?
What's up, Trey?
For those of you who don't follow Connor, you can follow Connor at Connor Goodson _ on X. Is that correct? Underscore?
Oh no, it's just at Connor Goodson.
At Connor Goodson.
No underscore yet.
No underscore. Yeah, I guess that would be too long. So I always say you should use Connor Goods, like a mafioso kind of guy.
I bring the goods,
brings the goods. So Connor, obviously a disappointing showing for Arkansas basketball against Tennessee, but a chance to bounce back with a couple of ranked teams coming to Bud Walton Arena this week.
Yeah, definitely. That's just how the SEC is this year. I mean, you play one game against the best team in the country, and then you get 2 home games against 2 top-rated teams. Ole Miss is number 23, and then Florida's obviously was ranked number 6 in the country before their loss to Kentucky this past week. But the SEC is just loaded this year, and we've talked about it on here before. Everyone's talked about it. They are probably, I would say, the best basketball conference in the country, which is pretty crazy when you talk about how bad this conference has been historically, and just the possibility of them getting 11, 12 teams in the NCAA tournament is wild. And it just goes to show that there's no weeks off in this league. Like, there's no games off. Arkansas is going to have to play their best week in and week out just to get to like above 500 in this league. That's how good it is. So really big test with Ole Miss on Wednesday. We talked to Chin Coleman a little bit earlier. And it's going to take a packed Bud Walton, Arkansas playing their best, and then you have to hope that Ole Miss has some guys that are, obviously having off days, and that maybe they get a little too confident from their win over Georgia.
So Connor, Arkansas had won 6 in a row, and I know that Miami is like 4-10. They're not very good. What's Michigan's record? Do you know what Michigan is?
I can find it here real quick. I just had it popped up.
I'm just saying, Michigan's 11-3. Michigan's got a pretty good team. We could tell from the game that they've got a good squad. We didn't just have to look at the record, but they've got a couple of, at least one good win in that stretch. They needed to win at Miami, and win that Michigan game. Those were very important. But, I think what you're talking about with the SEC with the basketball conference being so strong, I think that goes back to around a decade ago with the start of the SEC network, when that came to play. Because what I was told at the time was, Mike Slive was like, hey, it's time to step up. We need programming. We need good programming. It's time to step up in basketball. And you started seeing the level of coaches really be elevated across the conference. And I think that's just been built upon. At Arkansas, think about the level of coaches that they've had, over the last, I guess, decade plus. But you had John Pelfrey, who was terrible, Mike Anderson, who was a step up, Eric Musselman was a step up, and then John Calipari. And I think you're kind of seeing that, not exclusively, but you're seeing that a little bit across the conference with just really good coaches and an investment in basketball, investment in facilities. And that's why we're here today.
Yeah. And then, adding Texas and Oklahoma is also just kind of, two historically really good basketball programs as well. That just makes the league even better. And, Oklahoma comes in and they were undefeated before their opener against Alabama this week, but and obviously Texas is always going to be a tough out as well. But yeah, to your point, the last decade or so, the SEC, you can really see the effort behind making them more competitive as a league from a basketball standpoint. And I never would have pictured that. Obviously in football, you can picture our SEC teams, or the SEC being a lot better than like the Big 12s, the ACC. But I never would have pictured a year where the SEC is just so much better than, like the ACC conference head to toe. Like it is quite alarming how bad some of the traditional powers in the ACC are this year. And then how many SEC teams there are that could realistically make the tournament, not just make the tournament, but like be real players and go on like, second weekend type runs, go make Elite 8, Sweet 16, those types of things. Like just getting teams into the tournament is one thing, but when you have a league that actually has teams dangerous enough to, upset some other big fish and go on runs, that's really when you see the health of a conference and how good a conference really is. And I think the SEC has that. And so you look at this stretch of games for Arkansas and just the schedule in general. Arkansas doesn't really play the toughest schedule when you look at it, because they're not playing like the Auburns, the Alabamas, the Kentuckys and Tennessees. They're not having to play them twice. They're just playing them once. Like they play Tennessee on the road, they don't play them again. They play Auburn at Auburn, but they're not having to play them again. Their only game against Kentucky is at Kentucky. So obviously you may want a couple of those games in Bud Walton instead of having to go on the road, but you're not having to play them twice, which maybe weights their strength of schedule and how tough their schedule is compared to some of the other SEC teams that may weigh it down a little bit. But yeah, for this league, it's just a bloodbath, and Arkansas is going to have to play like way different. Like Chin Coleman and Calipari have said it. That didn't look like the team that they know, the Arkansas team that we've seen this year on Saturday against Tennessee. But you can't afford having that many games. And to your point a while ago, when you were bringing up, they beat Michigan, they won on the road against Miami, but like you said, Miami's 4-10. As good as it is to beat a team on the road, that's not like a great win when you look at, just how good they are. So Arkansas is missing a lot of key elements of having like a strong tournament resume. And so it's just not good enough right now, I think, to get them into that, upper half of the seeding. Like you want to avoid the 8-9 game in the NCAA tournament, but you want to be good enough to where you can maybe get up into the 6, a 5 seed. And Arkansas just doesn't have the resume capable. So they're going to have to play their best basketball of the year. And they're going to have to play way better than what we saw against Tennessee moving forward to be able to knock off teams that will make that resume good enough in the committee's eyes.
And most of those teams that you mentioned, by the way, they do play on the road. Obviously, they played Tennessee on the road, but those that you mentioned that they get in Bud Walton Arena are those single games. Connor, anything else to add? Anything going on with basketball recruiting? Any thoughts on transfer portal? Anything you want to add for you?
Well, so I was putting my game preview, starting to work on that, tell the tape for Ole Miss, and I noticed something interesting. Just I will touch on recruiting, but just to focus on this team, obviously Nelly Davis and his struggles have been, highly publicized and things like that. And this is a game that I think that Arkansas really needs to go out of their way to make sure that they can get Nelly Davis going, because I mean, if you look at it,
it's put up or shut up. It's put up or shut up.
If he doesn't get going now, it's almost like, I mean,
I'm so disappointed. And
it's disappointing because it's not like a case, everyone's saying like, why are we paying him that much money? He's a bust. He's not he is good. If you look at him at FAU, I mean, it's not like the FAU was just, beating up on a weaker conference or things. Like he led them to the Final Four and beating a lot of quality teams. And they were scheduling a lot of high quality, power conference teams in their non-conference at FAU too. So it's like, he's capable of playing better, but the wrist injury is part of it. They have him.
How part of it is the wrist injury, do you think, Connor?
I do think that's part of it.
I hate bagging on a guy because of an injury, because players are injured all the time, and sometimes those reports don't even come out, and people say stuff that's very frustrating. But I felt like the guy was going to be this crafty veteran that's always in the right spot, making other people look foolish just by his craftiness. And it seems like so often he's in the wrong spot or makes the wrong play. And, everybody points to the wrist.
And the wrist is part of it. You can't just like discount it, but you also can't hide behind it and say that that's all that it is, because it's not. I mean, even in games that he's, had, a decent output, he's just not doing the things that we expected from him. He's not being that player. And you say you expected him to be this crafty veteran that can, is initiating the offense. I mean, we all expected that, but it's like, even when he's not having the ball in his hands, it's just like he's just wandering around. You're not getting the effort. You're not getting the just that tenacity that he played with at FAU that made him like this. Almost, even when he doesn't have the ball in his hands, I likened him to like a junkyard dog. Like he's going to do what you need him to do to win games, chase down rebounds, dive after loose balls. You're just not seeing that effort. And some of that, it's like, is this role that he's in where he's just kind of stashed away in the corner? Is that really has that hurt his confidence enough where he's just not really invested in it? Or is it just like this guy has, is he taking a check and he's happy with whatever happens, just, going out there and struggling? I don't think that that's the case. I think that they have to try to get him into a role where he's maybe like coming off the bench and he's that second guard where you're playing him alongside just Boogie or just DJ. And you got to force him to come on. You got to manufacture him to get into some situations. And I mean, I can't understate or overstate how important it is to get him going, because this team's ceiling is much different when he's playing like he was at FAU compared to if you're getting just what you're getting now the rest of the season. And like, that is so big. And this game is perfect for for a guy like John L. Davis, who's experienced, because Ole Miss is one of the most experienced teams in the SEC. And I was just looking at their numbers. They've got 4 guys on their team. Their 4 best players are averaging a steal, 1.1 steals per game or more. They got 2 guys that are averaging over 2 steals a game. And you look at their turnovers, they only have the worst guy on their team is averaging 1.7 turnovers a game. You look at Arkansas, they have 5 guys averaging 1.7 turnovers per game or more. And DJ Wagner and Big Z are averaging over 2 turnovers a game. And Ole Miss is right now 3rd in the country in turnover margin. So this is a game where you need a veteran, a guy like John L. Davis to step up. He needs to initiate without turning the ball over. You need guys like Boogie to continue to dish out assists without turning the ball over. DJ Wagner played well, but he also had 4 turnovers against Tennessee and was, that's kind of been his thing this year. He's struggled taking care of the basketball. So you really need a guy like John L. Davis to step up, take control and put him in positions where he manufactures some success and really get a really good showing out of him. So this is kind of the game, like you said, it's put up or shut up time. And if Arkansas, if they come out and John L. Davis still looks like a shell of himself, then I think we've got some real concerns moving forward, and that significantly lowers this team's ceiling going forward. And maybe by then you need to start, tinkering your expectations a little bit for this team, because that will be disappointing. But like we've said, like people on,
just to hear you say that's disappointing, Connor, because my expectations are up here.
Yeah,
looking at this roster, I mean, there's been a lot of disappointing things that have happened so far. Just the injury with Jonas Adu, his slow start. It's just it hasn't been kind of what you'd hoped it would be. I'll be honest too, with the Tennessee game, when DJ started off on fire coming out, I was like, oh, if DJ Wagner's going to play like this, then Arkansas's got a shot,
Yeah, and then he played like that, and then nobody else did.
He ended up with 17 points.
Yeah, and he played well. I mean, he got into a stretch there where he was just throwing up threes, halfway through the second half, and so his efficiency wasn't as great. But if he starts like that, and then you get guys like Boogie Flan to step up, Adu Thero, who is notorious for maybe he either starts the game really hot and then fades, or it takes him a while and then he takes over. But if you can get that and then get some other guys to jump in, I mean, that's kind of the recipe for Arkansas success. But it is disappointing, I think, because everyone had sky high expectations for this team. And don't get me wrong, they have the talent. I mean, they still have the talent to go out.
We'll still see. We still got plenty to see.
Yeah, and it's still plenty of time. People on the board have reminded me, I made a comment about, I was like, maybe I was hoping that Big Z was going to, be a little bit better, where he wasn't such a liability defensively in the SEC play. And I said, well, that's probably not going to happen. And I had a couple of people, tell me it's one game. It's just you're overreacting. Why are you doing this? It's so disappointing to see from an insider or a staff member that they're giving up on a player one game in. And I'm like, well, I'm just saying it's 14 games in and he hasn't really shown. And so it's one game. We've got time, but there are some things that are concerning moving forward. So
yeah,
we'll be here to go over it and talk about it.
All right, Connor Goodson, Arkansas basketball is a dumpster fire, he says.
Come on.
I'm just messing with you. All right, Connor. Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. Obviously, big game tomorrow and on Saturday, both in Bud Walton Arena, and we'll see how things turn around.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what the crowd is with the weather. It should be a good crowd. I mean, it's the first SEC game, so it should be a packed place. But it'll be interesting. Hopefully, the crowd.
And it's a good time. It's the early night game, so 6 o'clock, and then on Saturday it's a 3 o'clock game, so that should be a really good crowd.
Yeah.
I hope.
All right. Well, I will hopefully be at both of them if the weather cooperates. That'd be nice. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
All right, buddy. All right, everybody. Thanks, Connor. Appreciate you. All right, everybody. That's Connor Goodson. Again, follow him at Connor Goodson on X, HawgSports basketball analyst. Somewhat dejected. I mean, there's a sparkles too. It's not like he's just totally given up on it. But that Tennessee game was just very disheartening. But they are number one in the country. I can remember back in 1993, Arkansas beat the tar out of Missouri, and Missouri ended up putting it together and built a Final Four team. That's my lone example, my outlier example. All right, let's see if we got any interesting comments. We got a lot of them. Adam Holt says, quick question, what kind of spot you think Arkansas is in compared to the rest of the SEC? If you had to rank 1 through 16, where would you put them? 13, year 6. I'm not sure exactly. Are you meaning like in transfer portal rankings, or you mean just overall as a program? Maybe if you could elaborate on that. Overall, as a program, I mean, I don't know, probably. Let me look real quick. If I'm saying overall as a program, where does Arkansas stand as a football program under Sam Pittman? I mean, Kentucky was bad last year, but they've been better. Kentucky doesn't play the same schedule as Arkansas. Mississippi State, you got to put them ahead of Mississippi State. They were 2-10 last year. Auburn hadn't been worth a damn in a while. But over 6 years, it's difficult. Vanderbilt, even though Vanderbilt went 7-6, they still haven't done what Arkansas has done traditionally. Florida has been underachieving, but they won 8 games last year. I mean, I'm definitely putting Arkansas somewhere near the bottom. I mean, there's no question about that. You look at this program, since 18, since 17 when they won 4 games. 18 they won 2. 19 they won 2. 20 was the COVID year. They won 3. That probably would have been a 6-win team had they played the non-conference games, at least 6. 21, they won 9. That was the one kind of outlier year. Then 7, then 4, then 7 again. Above Mississippi State, above Kentucky, above Auburn, above Vanderbilt. What has Florida done during that time? But definitely, I mean, maybe there's 4 teams. maybe not even that. I mean, I think all those teams could argue against Arkansas being below them, certainly. But that's just during, this recent stretch. Do you know how many are still in the portal today? The last number I heard had entered was 3,600, which is a ton. I don't know how many players are in the portal, but there are definitely some that will never get out. Let's see. Is it true when I hear some people that probably people say they aren't pursuing Kane Archer as much as they should? I don't know on that. That's probably a question for Danny. The good thing about like some of these questions, like if I miss some, Danny's always available on HawgSports on the Razor's Edge, always there. Our doors don't ever close, as I tell my wife. She hates that, but we're on the internet, so we don't shut it down. It's always open. Okay, so Justin Williams said they had a 10-win team last season with the talent was there. The issue was turnovers that killed this team. I don't know if I would say that was a 10-win team. 8 wins after seeing them, I could possibly get on board with saying that they could have won 8 games last year. 10 wins is a stretch to me. Razorback fans are tired of losing. Why are you tired of losing? Why do you think you deserve anything better? Because there's no other teams in the state? Because Arkansas is all you got? I agree with you, man, Mr. Bloodline. I mean, it's frustrating. The basketball team has done some good things in recent years. Last year sucked. This year hasn't been what we all hoped it would be at this point. Now, we'll see. There's plenty of season left to play, obviously. I can remember Musselman teams, not just blowing the doors off, and then the next thing you know, they're in the Elite 8. But football-wise, you're absolutely right. Arkansas deserves better. And I've said this before, it is not – and I don't care. I don't care that Arkansas won an average of 6 games since being in the SEC. It is not unreasonable for Arkansas fans to expect in a non-coaching change year to go 500 in conference play, 4-4. That is not an unreasonable expectation. It is not unreasonable to expect them to beat the 3 Sisters of the Poor teams they play in the non-conference every year. It's not unreasonable. That's 7. That's 7 wins right there. It's not unreasonable to expect them to beat the non-conference Power 5 teams that they play every other year. Okay? So sometimes that's 7 wins, sometimes that's 8 wins. It's not unreasonable to expect them to win their bowl game every other year, which they've done a pretty good job at winning their bowl game, but they haven't been in upper tier bowl games. So now we're talking 7, 8, and 9. 7, 8, 9 wins. It's not unreasonable to expect this program ever so often to be one of the top 12 teams in the country and play in the college football playoff. Ever so often. Not saying every year, not saying every other year, not saying every 3 or 4 years, but every once in a while, pop up there, have one of those great years, and be in the college football playoff. Those are not unreasonable expectations. It's also fair to expect them to go sub 500 during a coaching change, because in this age with transfer portal and the small window that you have to rebuild a team, I mean, most teams out there, everybody's going to point to Indiana and Kurt Signetti, but most teams out there are not putting together quality teams if they're coming off of a coach being fired and taking over that program. I mean, overwhelmingly, they're not. But there are a couple of outliers out there. But those are not unreasonable expectations. I just don't feel like asking for 500 in SEC play and going, winning your 3 cupcake games is too much to ask for out of Arkansas football, for all the time, investment that we put into this program, the coverage that it gets, the attention that it gets. I mean, you turn on the radio, everybody's going to talk about Arkansas sports. They're not talking about Arkansas, Arkansas State, UCA, the local pro team. Those might get a little bit of a blip, but it's Arkansas. That's what everybody's talking about. So asking for your one major sports team to be decent and give you something to feel proud about, it's just not too much to ask for. We're going to see what Sam Pittman does with this football team. They've put together a transfer portal class that I think has a lot of good players. I just don't know where are my superstars coming from. Like looking at the guys that come back, I would think that Braylon Russell probably has the best chance of being that bell cow type of running back. You'd expect that Taylor Green would be a notch better than he was last year. You would hope that the offensive line would be, maybe we're talking about getting back to being average or maybe slightly above average. If they can get to that on the offensive line, that's going to make everything else better. But Arkansas was significantly improved last year. I mean, they won 7 games, went to a bowl game. They won 4 games the year before. Again, to me, going 6-6 in the regular season in year 5 of your head coach is not the standard for Arkansas football. That's not we've turned it around. Back. Arkansas fans are going to be proud of this. That's not the standard. Okay. It's just not. So, we're going to find out. I think Sam Pittman needs a really big year. Like, again, I can understand. I'm not saying this is the right decision, but I can understand the aspect of, okay, things are back in order. We're not going to pay Sam Pittman to not coach at Arkansas. We're going to pay him and his assistants. We're going to allocate a significant amount of the revenue sharing money to football, along with what we've got in NIL, to bring us up to more level playing field, because they haven't been. I mean, that's fair. They have not been on the level playing field with some of their peers in the SEC, and we'll see how they do. I can understand that line of thinking. It's not that I 100% agree with it, because I also think you could, make a big splash higher. And I mean, it's like, you're not guaranteed to make a big splash higher, but it would be nice if there was something out there, something to really move the needle and get people involved in NIL and stuff. But I think the plan is to allocate most of their resources from revenue sharing into football to bring it up to a balanced playing field, because basketball is more self-sustaining in terms of the NIL money that we've obviously seen. They don't just put together this roster because everybody wants to play for John Calipari. Sure, that's part of it, but also there's money involved with bringing this caliber of players in. So I'm just kind of rambling. I'm not even sure what we were talking about, but the bottom line is, yes, do you deserve more? You absolutely do. And are your expectations too high? If those are your expectations, what I outlined, absolutely not. All right, let's end it there. All right, I want to thank Danny West for hopping on with us. I want to thank Connor Goodson, of course. I want to thank all you guys for your participation and your question. Sign up at HawgSports right now, HawgSports.com. Check out our friends at Ozarks Go, ozarksgo.net/hog if you haven't done so already. And let's see real quick if that line is out for Arkansas basketball. You did like 24 hours before, so it's probably not. Nope, don't see it. couple of days for college football playoffs also. We've got Notre Dame and Penn State on January 9th. That's -2.5 Penn State. That ought to be a great game. And Ohio State Buckeyes and the Texas Longhorns. Ohio State is -6 in that one. So college football playoffs keep trucking on. All right, everybody. That's it. That's the show for today. Appreciate you joining me. This has been Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, and we'll catch you next time.